welcome to our fourth event of spring 2014. And Trista is going to be talking about Aboriginal gardens here in Taiwan. So let's give it to Trista. Thank you.
谢谢大家，谢谢。I'll just pretend I have a microphone. Yeah, my name is Trista DiGenova, and I'm a graduate student in medical humanities at Taipei Medical University. And for the past 2 years, I've been doing this research on Taiwan Aboriginal vegetable gardens. So I put together this presentation to kind of show you what it's like, you know, like to go into the mountains and to study what people are growing and eating. And I learned so much about the food system and how things have evolved in Taiwan and in mountain. And this mountainous area is one of the few places in Taiwan that seems so. I mean, many places in Taiwan are very diverse, but in terms of like what kinds of food and vegetables and fruits you can eat, but these mountains seem particularly eco-diverse. So anyway, so this is a painting done by a Taiwan artist. First, look at the earth lying down, and I think I like this. I think this is a good image to begin with because it involves a paradigm shift about like how people, those of us who grew up in cities and stuff, may see nature in a totally different way than the indigenous perspective, which is to kind of be more at one with the earth and try and at least have an understanding with nature and so yeah, it's very indicative thing. It's something I try to do. I try to see it from their perspective, and I really have a deep respect for their knowledge and understanding of nature. So with that, the title of my research is What's Growing in an Atayal Garden, Indigenous Cultivation and Use of Plants in the Taiwan Mountain Community. This is a map of Taiwan, obviously, and the breakdown of where the tribes, there are 14 official tribes in Taiwan, and some unofficial ones, and it's evolved, it's changing as, you know, by every year, pretty much. Oops. And Atayal, Bufong, my research area, is right here. It's like on the border here, between Atayal and Saisha tribe. Okay, Atayal is the second largest Aboriginal group after Ami tribe, Ameju. And the Atayal people say that their origins are in Nantou, in a place called Xiang, and it's down here, and they say that their ancestors all originated from this rock up here, and oops, what the heck? Jeez. Then they started here, and then they moved up the central mountain range in Taiwan, which is right along here, or bridge, and it was due to overpopulation, they say, that they decided a couple of hundred years ago, from what they understand, a migration northward, all the way up until Ulai. You know, you may have been to Ulai, it's just a little bit south of Taipei. That's another Atayal tribe. So anyway, and you probably have heard of the Sadiq Ballet movie, Rainbow Warrior, Warriors of the Rainbow. This was a big movie. It was about the Japanese rebellion against the Sadiq Ballet tribe, which is a a subtribe of the Atayal, so they have many linguistic connections. And this is a botanical map of Formosa, northern Formosa from 1895. And it shows that this area here was considered about, what is it, like 120 years ago as primeval forest area. And also there was rice, tea, sugar, indigo, and orange that they were looking at Taiwan in terms of production. So I chose Wufeng Township to study. Wufeng means 5 peaks. It's a really kind of idyllic and beautiful place. Population of 4,500. Atayal and Saisha tribes, mainly Atayal, about 70% Atayal. And Saisha are mostly in Gaofeng, and whereas, say, Qingquan, which is where 2 of the main gardens that I studied, is Atayal. The area is known among Taiwanese and Chinese, mainland Chinese, for being the home of the poet Echo Lin or San Mao. You may have heard of it. She lived there, and also it was a residence in exile of the young Marshal Zhang Shuiliang, who during the Chinese Civil War actually kidnapped Chiang Kai-shek, and but let him free. So when the young Marshal came here, he was exiled for 10 years in this area. He was exiled in many places. He was exiled over in Beito, but it's also known to have excellent hiking and hiking opportunities, and it's also very typically hard hit in typhoon season. During the last major typhoon, Markai, there were a lot of problems, and the roads are often out because it's only one road that goes through the whole area, Route 122. So in my research, I look at what's growing in an Atayal garden, and I'm using an anthropological approach of interviews and direct observation and field surveys and participant observation to see what people are eating and what they grow to eat, and also I looked at what they're buying and where they buy it, okay, how they share resources in many cases among families. Also, I looked at how nutritional intake has changed over time. Like in the space of only 2 generations, the diet has radically changed. And so I find these things out by interviews and discussions, and I went there about 40 times in the past couple years. So how do you do it? First, I found a bunch of family, like Atayal and Saisha family. You know, they kind of adopted me, and it was perfect because that's the best way to get to understand a community, is if you have like a host family, right? To explain things to you, or to bring answer all your questions. So this is my Aboriginal sister, Sabi. She's a performer in a band, and she's also a dancer, and she's also works in a flower shop. And her auntie, this is one of her aunties up in Qingquan. This is uncle in Qingquan, and like her, it's the relationships start getting convoluted, but it's all like there are 2 clans there. There's the Zhang clan and there's the Chen clan. My research sites included the Central Market in Judong, which many people go to, maybe even just like once a week, to pick up like vegetables that are from fruits and vegetables that are from the entire region, and sometimes even from like southern Taiwan. And so I talked to most of the vendors along Route 122, they set up these little shacks by the side of the road, and so I would take a note of like what they're selling, what kind of things they're selling at what time of year, and what their experiences like, where their food comes from. There are many villages that I interviewed people in. Taoshan, Da'ai, Bailan. That Bailan is up at the top of the mountain. There's another place called Shugongli that I'm going to write. But Gaofeng, High Peak, Liangshan, Cool Mountain, Qingchuan. Okay, so and this is the first garden that that really kind of inspired me to understand this better. This is in Gaofeng. It's this is Shiat. He's the sub chief in the Saisha tribe there. This is Dr. Cho, who is the director of the Ufeng Clinic, and he was translating. He went to Johns Hopkins, and so his English is not bad, and he's been super helpful. And he'd help translate. I was asking Shiat about all the fruits and vegetables that they had on the property, and it's actually done through a family arrangement. In this case, where his older brother takes care of the gardening, and he does bulk of the work. But there are other people that come in and they may help, and everybody benefits from the garden. That's one thing I continue to see, that a garden is usually a family affair, and that everybody shares. When you visit somebody, you bring them something, you bring them some vegetables or some fruit or whatever. And that's just a typical thing to do. This was the first garden I saw in Qingchuan, and it used to be a community garden, but then it was bought up by the lady who lives down here. And they grow things like nasturtiums along the sides of the perimeter, so that to draw insects away from the vegetables. They also have like wild vegetables growing alongside the perimeter, and like Madeira vine. I'll get to show you. This is my major garden that I studied. Avine is Sabi's mother, and Avine and two other aunties, they take care of this garden, and every meal usually has at least some food from the garden. So it's kind of hard to calculate, but it's kind of like it's a smart thing to do to save a lot of money. I mean, because they can really, have vegetables, fresh vegetables all the time. They have so many varieties, like over 30 varieties of different foods. A lot of peas, a lot of squash. They have even a pomelo tree there that her uncle had planted like 40 years ago. Madeira vine on the edge again, and papaya, basil, chili peppers, cauliflower, broccoli. This goes on and on and on. And they have 3 growing seasons in the year, and so they constantly have something to eat. I noticed that they use some of the principles that I've seen in permaculture, described in permaculture. Do you know permaculture? It's like a way of designing a garden so that it's kind of self-sufficient. Like a food forest is the ideal garden, because you put some work into it, you make some good soil, then you plant all kinds of things and you don't need insect control. You don't use pesticides, but you have and you compost and you reuse any resources that you have ameliorate the soil. So this is, they use, actually this is all around Taiwan. You've probably seen this, but they put eggshells in the plants. That's something that's just like universal throughout Taiwan, although I've never seen it before I came here. Have you ever seen that in Canada? Yeah. Have you ever seen that?
Not just putting a bunch on like on the right on the top. No.
Yeah, that's just one thing they do, but they also have like whenever they have some scraps, they just toss it into the garden. And they have like a wet barrel of stuff, and then they put it back into the garden. And this, what she's doing here is collecting cauliflower stalks that won't be eaten, and she's giving them to the chickens. Right. So so I'm saying like that's something, that's a principle in permaculture too, is to put back into the soil that, like weeds or anything that will improve it. The modern Wufeng diet seems to be very strongly impacted by outside influences. Like when I talked to Dr. Cho, he said that 40 years ago, when he was a child, they didn't have rice. They would have like, and there was like, there was almost a lack of food. They kind of went a little bit hungry, but today this is this year, and they have rice all the time now. So that's a very Taiwanese. Actually, a long time ago, like 100 years ago, they used more millet. They ate more millet. We'll see the staples in a minute, but so they eat a lot more rice now, and like the fish this is up in the mountains. They can get fish from the river, but it's kind of overfished, and they're not, and they try not to fish too much, but they do. Sometimes in the past they sometimes might use like a natural poison to make the fish come up, or like shoot them or whatever. Because they're the only ones who can have guns in Taiwan, the Aboriginals. So for their hunting, and so every meal usually has rice, and maybe the fish often comes from Judong, like the central market, and then usually the vegetable comes from the gardens, and they might pickle some stuff too, like. And this is a sandwich man. He goes around in a van, and he's Taiwanese, Minanren they call him, and he said he was, and he lives in Iran, and he drives all the way up into the mountains to sell sandwiches there. So because there isn't like really a bakery, there's only maybe a handful, like 5 or 6 little mom and pop stores. Most, like half of those are Hakka, and the others are usually Atayao run. On the modern diet, like, so the kids, the new generation, they have so many choices. Here they can eat like steak and potatoes or whatever, but then and junk food. There's a lot of they're like total candy-holics up there, and they like bug me for chocolate and candy whenever I go there, and so I try not to spoil them too much, or give them healthy snacks. But the diet is changing, and so say here this is partially the traditional diet of the sweet potato, but instead of mixing it with ginger, which is how they used to eat it, they slather it in sweet mayonnaise, which is probably not the most healthy thing to do. So I find that the greatest health risks, besides accidents, because they don't, wear helmets, and it's because it's so close. They're usually going to very close places, and also their death rate is higher than the rest of the Taiwan population, mostly due to preventable diseases that are said to be due to lifestyle choices like smoking and chewing and alcohol consumption. Although there is some betel nut consumption in this. That's usually seen as particularly bad in the Aboriginal community, like betel nut drinking and cigarette smoking, which is a deadly combination. Like in the statistics of the medical literature, that combination is pretty much bound to give you like pancreatic cancer. But they also have higher rates of tuberculosis and skin ailments, partially due to the kind of sanitary conditions. They don't have much of a bathroom, or it's the plumbing and is not as advanced as the rest of Taiwan, which is also not very good. But the greatest health risks have made a 10-year gap in life expectancy between the Taiwanese and the Aboriginal population, the people of tribes, in Aboriginal villages. So, although the life expectancy has risen like 20 years in the past 50 years, it's not quite as high for Aboriginals, mainly because of these factors. But it's not due to, I would argue it's not anything to do with diet, because actually their diet is extremely varied. Some of the traditional foods like the millet, foxtail millet, an ancient crop, guns, germs, and steel. Author talks about that as like millet being one of the main crops, ancient crops in Asia. These are like local green beans, but some of them are kind of purple. These are vegetables that Mimi's preparing for dinner that are gathered locally. And this is a really cool plant. It's called a telegraph plant, and in Chinese they call it a sudo, a bean tree. And it makes these black beans that are really nice. Several people told me that it's good for old people, it's good for arthritis of the back, it's good for makes you strong, and so this is what's called an indigenous plant, only in Taiwan. And the Atayal people use this. They call it dana. It's a spikenard. It's called a spikenard tree, and they use it as a spice in stews. And it's that and Macau are probably the most famously known spices or whatever that Atayal are known for. Other staples are taro, of course, and they use not only the roots but also the shoots and sweet potatoes, of course. Sweet potatoes have kind of evolved in their thinking of they kind of look down on sweet potatoes now, because it used to be they ate just too much of it when they were little, So they associate it with like being in poverty. Although sweet potatoes are one of the most nutritiously advantageous things to eat, and but they still look down on it sometimes now. Bamboo, of course, is used in everything from construction of houses to cooking, rice these rice rolls in it. You've probably seen them in the mountains if you're traveling in the mountains. Or kitchen implements. They talked about like garlic and ginger and sweet potatoes. And this is yahoo. They call it yahoo. It's a wild lettuce. It tastes kind of like a bitter spinach. It's pretty yummy. And they have things like over 4 types of banana. Over 4 types of different kinds of bananas. Okay, and this is a mulberry, mountain Taiwan mulberry. So they have a lot of that too. And they also talked a lot about wild vegetables, yei chai, wild vegetables. They said there were about a dozen of them, and these are some of them, like washek. They call this washek. It's like a nightshade, and several people told me that it's good for old people with high blood pressure, for treating high blood pressure. And I was told you just, it grows wild. All these things, they grow wild, so you can just pluck them. And this one, you're supposed to put it in cold water and then put it immediately in really hot water. And that's how it was described. This is called like mountain celery. It tastes a little bit like celery. These are what we call fiddleheads. It's a species of fern, and but I've also heard that it can, like if you eat too much of it, can give you cancer, apparently. But these are the fiddleheads put in icy cold water and a ton of salt. And that's what he's eating. And when I tasted that, I thought, well, no wonder there's such like high incidence of strokes and hypertension here, because they eat so much salt now. When it used to be so difficult to get salt, they would have to walk 2 days to trade a deer skin for some salt. That's how hard it was to get salt. Now they put a ton of it in everything, salt and sugar and drink and smoke and so all these. If there's any element of the diet that could be responsible for the 10-year gap in life expectancy, it's probably that, the high salt intake. Other things that they often eat are like, this is Perilla frutescens, also called like a purple basil. And they said this was ginseng vegetable. And I asked about it. Is it really ginseng? I said, yeah, it's really ginseng. Some Rensen, yeah. She swore up and down it was, but it's not. It's another plant, but its roots are reminiscent of the ginseng. So, but it's probably really healthy. This is a Madeira vine that grows so that it's so quickly, and it takes over a tree, for example, and it will kill it. And so it's considered a noxious weed in Australia and parts of Africa.